If anybody on Zoom wants to join us, or sorry, if anybody on leadership wants to make an announcement, now's the time. Going once, going twice? Okay. Does anybody in the room want to introduce themselves if you're a new member, or maybe just haven't hung out with APA members in a while?
I'm Jim. I came once before. This is my wife, Jan. She's new.
Hi. Welcome. Great. Well, we're glad to have y'all. I don't have any announcements. So today's meeting is going to be on ballot measures. We, as a leadership team, have spoken about this and have all voted ourselves on some of these ballot measures and how we feel about them, but there were many that we couldn't come to a consensus on. So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to open up the floor for comments and membership feedback. Mindy, do you have any announcements you'd like to make about affordable housing?
No, we'll be talking about the most important thing for affordable housing in a little bit.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And last thing is donations. So we have a basket out front that I'm going to go grab once we get things going. And I'm just going to pass it around. We have a fee that we pay to the church every month in order to make this meeting happen. But don't feel obligated to donate. If you'd like to help us and contribute to our work, please feel free to do so. And I think that's it. So we'll go ahead and get started. We've got a presentation today that we're going to pull up. And for folks on Zoom, if you're having any difficulties hearing us or seeing what's going on, just let us know. Great. Gonna move over here. Okay, so the way it's going to work is we have some slides of a whole bunch of different propositions and amendments and ballot measures. We have a little bit of information for y'all, and I'm going to, if it's okay with the leadership team, defer to them. We all did some research on each of these slides, and if there are any questions or anything that you all would like to add, now's the time. We'll have 2 to 3 membership comments. If it's a really lively conversation, we'll open it up for a few more comments, but we want to make sure that we're respecting everybody's time today. So first up is Amendment E. And Robin, I think that is one of the amendments that you researched.
That is. Can you hear me? Okay. So this is Robin Kupernick, and this was mine to research. This is an amendment, so it would actually add something to the Constitution. And I believe that means that we have to have a 55% vote yes to pass this. What it does is it extends the current homestead exemption that we currently have for seniors in Colorado. It extends it to include surviving spouses of members of the U.S. Armed Forces that were killed in the line of duty or who died in service-related conditions, so Gold Star spouses. My understanding when the legislature referred this to the ballot is that it was a very nonpartisan. I think everybody voted for it. If not everybody, it was almost everybody. So it was a very overwhelming majority, both Democrat and Republican, that voted to refer this over. It would save an average amount in 2020 of eligible homeowners. They would save $597. So it's a nice bump. APA is recommending a yes vote on this. It obviously shows gratitude to our Gold Star spouses, and we definitely want to support them at very minimal impact to the state budget. They did an analysis. It's only $288,000 in the first year, which compared to the size of the total budget is very small. So that's all I have for that one.
do we have, is it any folks in the room or on Zoom who like to comment on this amendment or make a suggestion as to how we should vote?
The comment this is Pat Malone. The only comment I would make is, Robin, you said that this is an exemption for seniors, and I have to say that it's a limited for seniors. You have to meet certain things, and this has nothing to do with the Gold Star, but I have to say that because it bothers me that ours is so cheap. That's all.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. And I'm not an expert in this exemption, and so I'm glad that you added that.
Any other comments?
What exactly, what the.
Maybe we should talk about
Well,
it separate, because it really isn't
You're
pertinent to
talking about
this.
the homestead exemption, the property tax exemption, not this exemption.
Correct,
Right,
correct.
yeah, this is kind of a slam dunk. I mean, all the leadership supports it, bipartisan, so I think we can move on. Anyway.
Great.
All right, this is the one I did. It's a little bit of like a bespoke, narrow issue that was actually on the ballot in 2020 and got resoundingly beat and is now back on with a slight variation. I'll say at the top, I think we should stay neutral on this. This is about charitable gaming regulations. So this is if your church wants to host a bingo and what are the rules around that, okay? They want to reduce the amount of years that you have to be a registered organization from 5 to 3 and change some of the rules around who can run it. I don't think this affects very many charities, and I sort of wonder why this is an issue that they keep referring. I think we should say neutral just because it is such a narrow, bespoke issue and you guys can decide for yourself. I'll say personally, I work for an organization that investigates charity fraud. So I personally will be voting no on this because I think the 5 years actually reduces the likelihood of charity fraud here. However, reasonable people could argue the other side of that. So that's the issue. It's super narrow. Again, we voted on the same thing 2 years ago, or very, very similar version of this 2 years ago.
I would add, if I could, one of the things, it's a really kind of up in the air thing, but because this is an amendment to the Constitution, the idea that we would put in the Constitution the ability to have a third party run these charitable games scares the crap out of me. I don't like that. I think anytime you bond something into the Constitution, you're stuck with it. And if it turns out to be really, really awful, I don't know what you're gonna do. And I, for one, my daughter was in band and we ran bingo games. And yes, it's really hard to find somebody within the organization to run that game and, be the manager. I mean, there's all sorts of special rules that you have to do it. But the thought of opening that up to a third party for-profit business and stick it in our Constitution makes me really worry about it.
Sorry, I'm on Zoom. Can you hear me? Okay. It was mentioned that this got voted down previously, but it got tweaked. Does anybody know what got tweaked?
So the one that was in, and I don't understand why this I tried to find out more history about it, and it's just not a ballot measure that's getting a ton of press either then or now. The tweak was the paying managers and that first bullet is the tweak. So before it was just reducing from 5 to 3 years. They added the repeal, the ban on paying managers and operators. So that's what was different. It lost handedly. I think it was like 41% voted for it. It could be because people don't understand it and they see just gambling and reflex vote no. It's just such a narrow, I just can't imagine how many organizations this really affects. et cetera. But I do think like this is a great avenue for fraud. So I just want to say that there are so many fake nonprofits out there, you wouldn't believe it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
I do. I do.
Great.
I guess it just strikes me as, well, two things. One is the potential for fraud. Having been involved in a number of nonprofits back in Las Vegas, where, believe me, there's a huckster on every corner. But the thing that really bothers me is this seems to be more along that line of, is there a way to privatize all kinds of aspects of things, whether it's governmental things, in this case now it's nonprofit things, I don't know. I'm not in favor of privatizing things, I guess, is the biggest thing. And this just strikes me as yet more, I wonder if this is a wedge thing where after this, does that enable other sorts of alterations, especially since it's in the Constitution? I'm through.
Well, yeah, like gambling was supposed to revitalize the little towns like Blackhawk and Cripple Creek. Now they're just monster casinos up there. And so like, I wonder if that's going to do the same thing with it. I would definitely vote no.
Cool. All right, let's move on.
Great.
Oh, quick question then, based on this, which I think I was going to vote no anyway, and I hadn't even come up with some of the reasons like it's constitutional. Should the group still stay neutral, or would this be something to vote on and say that?
I feel comfortable taking a vote. Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna vote on it, I do want to say, urge us to stay neutral, because it is a small measure that could have arguments both ways. It's not a major, I don't know, progressive issue. So I would urge us to stay with what leadership did and stay neutral. Even though I'm personally gonna vote again.
Okay. Let's take a vote of just hands. All in favor.
We have the people on the.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're on Zoom, if you can raise your Zoom hands, that'd be great. All in favor of this measure, raise your hand.
Should we first decide if we want APA to take a stance
Right.
on it or not?
Yeah.
Because I tend to agree with Bruce, like,
Sure.
let's not overwhelm
Well-
people with
well, I think we
I think
recommendations.
we're going to
Yes,
vote
no,
yes,
neutral.
neutral, no.
Okay.
Okay, so,
What's the hand for people on the neutral
on
Zoom?
I think there's a thumbs up.
yeah, I think there's like a
Okay.
thumbs up, there's like a raise hand, and then there's like a thumbs down.
Okay, do you guys?
It's on
know-
your reactions. I see it on there's a little thing that says reactions.
But if we want to be neutral or no, we do not raise our hand, correct?
Not
Yes.
until she asks the question.
Thumbs up is yes, hand raise is neutral, and thumbs down is no.
No, just any reaction. Yes, do you want to vote yes? Do you want to
Right,
vote?
but the
okay?
reactions stay on the,
No, they come down.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Neutral. Raise your hand. One. Okay, so it looks like 9 for neutral. And no. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm seeing 11 for no.
Okay, the no's
So I
have it.
think the no's have it. Yep. No on amendment F. Okay.
That was a lot of attention paid on one that was.
That's okay.
Okay, next up is Prop FF, and that is Robin.
Okay, so this is the last one that I have. I think after this I'm done. This one is a proposition, so it's not an amendment to the Constitution. It was referred by the legislature, and if over 50% vote yes on this, then it will pass. So this is a proposition that we tax the wealthiest citizens in Colorado and use that money to provide breakfasts and lunch to all school children, regardless of whether you are, low income or not. So currently, about 42% of Colorado students are eligible in some way for help with their lunches. And they have to demonstrate this. And one thing I have heard about, I'm not at all involved in the school, and so I don't know this on a personal level, but I've read stories of where kids that are eligible for free lunch, there's a stigma to it, and it can be embarrassing if they present with their, and other kids realize that. So one of the biggest benefits I think about this, I'm for this, and I think that APA voted, the leadership team voted to support this. But one of the biggest reasons I want to support this is because it takes away any of that stigma. Another reason is I think it's just a very practical solution that we are making sure that all kids at all times have access to healthy school meals. You can still bring your own lunch, but if you need breakfast or if you need lunch, you're going to get it at school. So just kind of going through some of the finances, it'll cost $100 million. And again, we are funding this by limiting the tax deductions for higher earning Coloradans. I heard recently a presentation by the Colorado Fiscal Institute, and they said that our right now, the tax deductions that wealthier households have in Colorado are considerably higher than those in other states. And so this ballot measure would bring them down to $12,000 for individuals and $16,000 for joint filers. So really you're using, you're using money from the wealthiest folks to fund this initiative. Some other things this program does is it makes available grant funding for schools to increase wages or stipends for the school lunch staff. So, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have seen signs, but they always need people to help feed kids at lunch. You can buy new equipment and you can source food from local farms. So again, APA leadership team voted to recommend a yes vote, and here are the reasons. It makes sure that kids are fed well. It improves their chance at learning. It makes sure that, 2 healthy meals a day is going to go a long way towards having healthier kids, and it'll make our tax code more progressive. So does anybody have questions or discussion on this one?
Yeah, I think this is pretty much a slam dunk. I don't know.
There's a question in the back. Or a comment.
I actually have a comment. This is my first in-person meeting, Amy Weber. I just want to clear up that idea that there's a stigma attached to free lunch to schools, because having worked at the school for a long time and having spent time with some people in the cafeteria, it's all online. Kids who get free and reduced lunch, they have their trays just like everybody else. They go through, and those people, they call them lunch ladies, but the professionals who work in the schools, they very quickly process people through. And so I want to maybe dispel this myth that there's a stigma attached to it, because there's no way. It's not like showing up at the grocery store with food stamps that are blue and white and causing a big backup. So I don't want people to think that that is in fact a part of why you might vote on this. You may choose to still vote on it.
Amy, I just have a question. I saw something recently about where the parent had forgotten to fund it, something like that. And so the kid, I don't even know if it was in Colorado, if anybody else saw it. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So
No,
maybe it
kids who
couldn't
have a
happen.
balance not being able to get their lunch, is that what
They
you're
couldn't
talking
get their lunch and something was attached to
about? There's a
them,
lot
like,
of stuff going on the internet around that.
I can't hear
There's a
you.
lot of stuff on the internet talking about kids being denied lunch because their parents
Yeah.
haven't been able to whatever, resolve the balance,
Right,
but I don't think it's been Colorado.
okay.
Okay.
And the potential is.
You have
Our
experience.
kids used to come home with stamps all the time because we fucked up and put money in their account, you know, and I don't know if they still do that, but I don't know how many times poor Julia came home with us.
But did
Apple
they still give
stamp.
her food? Because the thing on the
They
internet
did
says
give her
they
food,
don't
but-
let the kids.
But
she
kids
understands.
said,
Kids
oh,
know.
a long time now, I haven't worked in the schools now as the principal secretary for 13 years, so, or 10, no, I don't know. I've been retired for a while, but they used to get peanut butter and jelly. You owe us money, you don't get to have lunch. Here's your peanut butter and jelly or sun butter and jelly.
But kids owe money regardless of whether the free and reduced lunch program doesn't have it.
No, it's not the, it's just,
For everyone
just-
else's kids with
yeah.
parents, as you said.
right,
forgot
just
to
lunch
spend
in
money.
general is kind of awful. And if kids can just go through the line and get their food, it seems so much better to me. And I can tell you, half of one of those floors in Jefferson County School Administration Building is filled with people managing the free and reduced lunch program. Half of an entire floor. And, you know, you would get rid of some of that administrative stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
you like,
Well, I have a follow-up question. I'm not sure passing this gets rid of that administrative piece, because this just adds a different administrative piece that needs to be coordinated between the two. You know, how does this reduce with the federal free and reduced lunch program compared to the Colorado dollars? So I don't think you should vote yes on this under an assumption that it would reduce that. I just think those are two sort of fallacious arguments for voting yes on that. Now, that said, school district food service workers are living below the poverty line.
Right.
Mostly because they don't have full-time work. They work only part of the year and they only work part of the day. So between those two things, they're absolutely living below poverty level for our county. And so there might be value in this because of raising wages for those types of individuals.
Okay.
do you have a comment, Laura?
I'm gonna vote yes for this, so this isn't a deterrent, but for those of us with parents, just something to be aware of. The last 2 years, school lunches have been free, if you didn't know this, because of pandemic funds. And the quality of the school lunches went down dramatically because of the volume. And as a lazy parent, I buy my kids lunch, and suddenly this year we have way better quality of food. Last year I was like, oh my gosh, we're just getting like yogurt parfaits and chicken fingers and every day. So I think just us as good citizens need to just make sure that the same thing doesn't happen, because not all food's created equal, and we do want our kids to have healthy food. And that's definitely not the case the last 2 years when it was free. And they said it was because that was just easier with the, like they tripled the volume, right? So I could see that being the same.
This also,
That's really insightful, Laura. And my hope is that, because unlike during COVID, if this passes, it would provide funding so you can have more than a yogurt, right? That's my hope that, you know, would happen if this passes.
Is it was funded just through the pandemic relief dollars passed.
Oh, okay.
More the volume of the food made it was a lot easier to do a plated chicken nuggets 4 times a week than give choices.
Yeah,
and
but if there's
variety.
funding for workers, maybe we'll get more
Yeah,
workers.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's more something we just need to like make sure it doesn't an unintended consequence. I will be voting yes for this.
I just want to speak in terms of supporting this and APA as a progressive organization. I think this is a core issue for APA to have school lunches be something that provides lunches for everybody. So I would, and our leadership voted 7-0 to support it. So, or 8-0, I don't know which, but I think it's a very good a help for school lunches.
Yeah, before I just want to say, I heard Caroline that you mentioned an equity issue. And I want to make sure that we are keeping that kind of at the front of our minds. You know, many kids in Jefferson County, but also across the state, maybe don't have food security when they go home. And so to know, I think that they're going to have a meal at least 2 times a day at school is a huge relief lifted off of them. So that's something to consider as well. Do we want to take a vote on this?
I think we all agree.
Do we all agree it's a yes?
Well,
I didn't hear any no's.
Yeah.
just
I didn't
heard
hear any no's.
discussion.
Yeah, great.
so some of this stuff that leadership voted, I mean, if people want to vote, that's fine, but a lot of this stuff, we were unanimous.
Mhm, great. Okay, moving on. I believe that this is me. So I had proposition GG. This isn't a super, yes, this isn't a super flashy issue. A lot of what I read was that it is a transparency issue. So if we were to vote yes on it, it would mean requiring ballot titles and fiscal impact summaries for initiatives that affect income taxes to include information on how the change would affect income taxes for different categories of income. And I believe it would also add a table as well. And it seems to me that a lot of the core progressives in the state legislature think that it's really important to increase transparency. So let me just look back at our votes on Prop GG, but it seems like we were kind of split between yes, neutrals, and no's. So if there's any other discussion.
That's a good question. So is this proposing that when there's a petition put forth, the petition will include on it a table that illustrates how whatever that petition is for will impact
Yes.
income based on tax bracket? So if I know what my tax bracket is, I can look at the chart and I can say, okay.
Right, yes.
There's the petition and the ballot
Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't the issue on that, whether this would actually be on the ballot itself?
Yeah. I think
that-
so, yeah,
And so the objection was that it would make the ballots too expensive or too cumbersome or
right,
something.
I think that's the
Yeah.
counter argument.
So yeah, I feel strongly about this one. I'm going to vote a strong yes on this when I get my ballot, because I think it has a lot to do with Tabor. Because right now Tabor requires that anytime we change taxes in any way, want to pay teachers more, that's great. You know, you got to have something on the ballot that starts with, shall taxes be raised? And so it's very, very hard to ever get something through on the ballot like that. And this is kind of the pushback for that problem, because you still have to say, shall taxes be raised? But if you have a table right there that says, oh yeah, they're going to raise taxes, but I'm going to be hardly affected, this really impacts, you know, the much wealthier people, then these kind of initiatives, I think that we progressives would like to pass, that we had such a hard time passing because of Tabor, we have a much stronger chance if it shows right there, we're not taxing you, we're taxing the wealthiest Coloradans.
I was gonna say, and I really respect Robin's position. I actually think we'll have the exact opposite effect. I think upper middle class people that are like, whatever, are gonna be like, oh, it's $500, not voting for it. So I think that this is actually, in my view, a way that could unintentionally strengthen Tabor, which is why I was on the no camp. But I really respect Robin's position, and I think we just don't know. Which I'm not a behavioral economist. Like, it's like, how will people perceive seeing exactly how much things are going to go up? I'm afraid it will make people be more likely to vote no. I can respect Robin's argument that it might make people more likely to say yes.
Yeah, it's hard to predict how people will react, but I do feel that it is a way of getting information out there as to whether a measure impacts the wealthy or impacts the rest of us. So I'm gonna urge us to endorse this, because progressive taxes is probably the most important, one of the most important progressive issues, and we don't have progressive taxes in Colorado, so it might help that. So
Yeah, I'm good.
Yes, I see a hand up here in the back,
Question.
and then I saw another one if you would like to go afterwards.
Will this increase the expense of somebody, a group trying to get something on the ballot, get petitions signed? Now suddenly, how accurate does your table have to be? How much do you have to hire a research firm, an economist firm to figure out how much your proposal is going to cost? That seems like it would deter progressive grassroots organizing, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I'm not sure either.
I just wanted to bring up something that Taylor put in the chat. He said, Colorado Fiscal Institute supports this measure.
So I had two questions. One was similar to the one that you just raised, which is at a federal level, the General Accounting Office, GAO, for example, is like with a Congressional Budget Office. One of those offices tends to vet numbers and make sure that they're accurate. So I'd be interested in knowing what the plan is to ensure that the data is accurate. I think to the extent as a society, we benefit from open discussion around true facts. I think this is a good proposition to have, whether it results in more or less support of measures. To me, that ought to be a bottom line value.
Yeah.
I work with a bunch of people who are like, oh, those guys are taxing the heck out of me. It's like, they're not taxing the heck out of you. You're not gonna pay that tax, or you're paying these taxes because you don't understand where the taxes are coming from. So I know so many people that don't realize that this tax doesn't apply to them. And when they get something that passed a tax against them, they don't even know about it. So I'm like, I'm all for this.
For what it's worth, I just wanted to point out that Brianna Titone, she came out with her recommendation. She supports it. And also Working Families Party just announced their support of various ones, and this was one of them also. Just
I see in the Zoom that Hal has his hand up.
Thank you. There's been a number of very good points here that have been made. I tend towards yes, because I think naively in some senses that information can change people's minds. Now, if someone's mind shuts off as soon as they see tax increase, I'm not sure the presence or absence of a chart like this, but I do hopefully agree, and not having any insight into the behavior of large masses of people. However, I want to think that if someone's mind can be changed, that the addition of these charts, these tables, may, if they are able to come to that conclusion of, oh, this is not going to affect me, but it's going to affect the big house on the hill. Well, okay, I'm fine with that. And getting back to the basic philosophies of progressive taxation, it seems to be, to me, that it would fit in with that sort of thing. Now, will it make some people go, oh my God, numbers, and their brains explode? I don't know, but I want to think that those that may be swayed by data may be assisted in their decision-making process with these charts. That's all.
I think, sorry. It seems like we're a little bit all over the place on this one, so I would recommend that we take a vote. So we'll do it the same way as the last one. Yeses, can you please raise your hand? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
another one.
15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so that seems like a yes to me.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Well, moving on. Oh.
Someone mentioned, was it the Colorado Financial Institute had also?
Fiscal,
Fiscal. Okay, thanks. I just was wondering what
Sure.
that was.
Oh, this is me.
Okay.
What a great segue that was to this one. I think that could really help if this one passes. And as we continue to see these citizens initiatives to reduce the state income tax, both corporate and individual, we see them almost every 2 years. The goal of the people who put this one up is to get rid of income tax altogether in Colorado. And in Colorado, 65.7% in the year 2020 of our revenue in Colorado comes from individual and corporate tax. So how you can get rid of that is beyond me, but this one is going at it again to get it down to 4.4. In 2020, they reduced it about that same amount. And we need the money because of Tabor. We need the money. And our flat tax means that people who are of lower income end up paying a way higher percentage of their income in taxes than someone who is, you know, in the $500,000 tax bracket. That's where these initiatives are coming from, and that's what they want. That saves them a lot of taxes, both corporate and individual. It's not progressive. I urge everybody to vote no on this. It's just not good for the state. Colorado Fiscal Institute has said no. Bell Policy Center has said no. Those are two big financial watchdogs in Colorado. And as a progressive organization, I sure don't see how we could vote for this. But if we have the table, it would show what would happen to the state's income. It's billions of dollars that would be taken right off the table.
And it's in the blue book, which is wonderful. If you all got your blue books,
Yeah.
they have these tables for this one, and I was unaware of how it affected. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I was gonna vote no anyway, but I'm like, oh, definitely no.
Yeah, Margie, did you?
Well, I was just wondering if we continue to reduce income tax, where's the revenue to run the state gonna come from?
Exactly, they're gonna have to add fees.
According to Jared Polis, it's the corporations that pollute will have to pay more, but
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, and my daughter lives in Texas, they don't have a state income tax. The property tax is outrageous. And so somebody who's, because of the valuation of property is increasing, has been for the past few years. There are people who have been living in their homes for maybe 15 years. And now all of a sudden their property is worth $200,000 or $300,000 more, and they're being taxed to death. You know, I rode in an Uber when we went there last year, and this poor Uber driver was saying, my property value has increased, my taxes are increasing so much that, you know, I can hardly pay them now. Really, it's a non-fair tax.
Yeah, money has to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
And, you know, we already have fees for everything, and that would only get worse. And all of those fees, that's just another way to cause a lot of people who are on the lower end of the income spectrum a lot of trouble.
Just real quickly, the Colorado Department of Revenue every 2 years puts a report, tax profile. And the latest tax profile has people making under $15,000 a year paying 21.3% of their income in taxes and fees. You know, like license plates and that sort of thing. People making over $200,000 a year pay 7.1% of their income in taxes. And this is the only, income tax is the only progressive tax that we have. The taxes are wealthy slightly more than the poor.
Pat, did you have a question? Or
Isn't the opposing argument saying that we don't really need that, all that money that we're wondering where is it gonna come from, because they think that, you know, we as a government, or not we, not me, spend it foolishly or whatever. Isn't that one of the
That's
opposing
been,
arguments?
that's been a conservative argument for a long
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
that government just wastes our money.
Yeah.
And I think Colorado's cut pretty tightly. You know, we've been flush with money the last couple of years because of COVID funds and the infrastructure bill, but that's not gonna last forever. And, you know, yes, we got a Tabor refund, but that's not
Yeah,
always.
it was
gonna
COVID money.
Was leadership unanimous on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else that they want to add?
Did you know why Jared Polis is so for this?
So what?
Jared Polis is like on his little art discussions on NPR. with
Because he's
Ford.
not really a progressive,
not a
he's a libertarian.
He is a
Wait, so he got his one issue of gay rights, and then now he's off
Well,
to the right.
Maybe he's been okay on some things, but generally pretty conservative.
Yeah, we don't want to get off the topic.
Yeah.
I could go all day.
Okay, so is this, does this feel like a unanimous yes to folks?
No, no, it's a no.
It's our, sorry, no, my apologies. Yes.
Yes, we agree with leadership and vote no.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, Prop 122.
That's me again, so you get to hear me again. This one, we were a little, split on. This would, set up a program, a board to oversee the use, production and sale of natural medicine. That's the title of it. Right now, until 2026, it would only look at psilocybin, which is the compound that is in the magic mushroom. It would cover psilocybin and psilocin. And it would set up a regulatory board that would, after 2026, and maybe during that time, look at other natural medicines. So it does open the door for some other psychedelic medicines or natural products. The thing that I found, and I found quite a few studies that have been done, Denver has decriminalized mushrooms since 2019. And I'll just go real briefly over the synopsis of the two studies that I read. One of them was Johns Hopkins and the other one was National Internal Medicine. But the molecular structure of psilocybin allows it to penetrate the central nervous system. Earlier studies showed that it does relieve major depressive symptoms. And in this one study, it was up to a month, and then they did a follow-up, and it's showing that it could be as long as a year. 2018's Johns Hopkins researchers suggest that we recategorize mushrooms from a category 1 drug to a category 4, which category 4 is where sleep aids come in. A survey of 300 people with alcohol abuse disorder, so not, it's beyond, you know, it's beyond alcoholism, I think, reported reducing or abstaining alcohol use after taking a psychedelic drug such as psilocybin, LSD, or DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. Psilocybin seems to tamp down the brain's area called the claustrum, which kind of is where some of our anxiety and ego and all sorts of stuff reside. It's very deep in the brain, and the psychedelics seem to be able to access that and kind of stop some of that. The Johns Hopkins findings in a trial that they conducted said that there are 3 really important parts to working with psychedelics. One is the set, which is psychological expectations. So what is the client thinking they're going to get from it? The setting, which is the physical environment where this use of psilocybin would take place, and then the clinician and therapy relationship. So those are important parts of this bill, or this initiative. You have to do it in a setting. It's not to just willy-nilly allow anybody to use magic mushrooms. You have to have a therapist that is trained in its use. It has to be guided. It has to be in a clinical setting. So my feeling is any tool in the toolbox is important in some of the mental health issues out there and some of the addictive things that are out there. I did find a Denver Gazette article that reported on the psilocybin mushroom policy review panel, which they were charged with looking at what happened after the 2019 Denver decriminalization of mushrooms. And they found no issues at all. They decided that they needed to say something, I think, and said, we should be training our first responders in any kind of mushroom-induced crisis but that so far there wasn't any kind of problem that they had found. So when we put all of this on our website after this meeting, I'll link all of these studies if you so choose to read them. But we were 2 yes, 6 neutral vote in leadership, and I had voted for neutral. I will probably personally vote yes, but I'm open to change my mind.
Does anyone have any other comments?
Sure, I'm a therapist, substance use counselor, licensed.
We do need to hear from you.
Society is heading in this direction anyway. And having substances, I work with people mandated to treatment who are disallowed from using substances, and I have seen, they get a positive urine test, they get sent back to jail, they get kicked out of their treatment program, because that's how the legal system is, it's all about compliance and structure.
Please speak to the owl.
Owl, I'm a substance use counselor. I have seen that society is heading in this direction anyway. I work with mandated clients who get kicked out of their mental health treatment for using substances because they are disallowed based by probation. I have also been woefully undereducated in how to effectively incorporate use of THC, use of microdosing, things like that. I'm okay that I'm not educated in that. I don't necessarily want to provide that kind of treatment, but I think keeping substances that people are going to use anyway criminalized gets people stuck into the system, and it's a barrier to them accessing the care they need, whether that's because they use and are kicked out or because they avoid treatment altogether because they don't want to get caught. And I personally tend to be on the side of you shouldn't criminalize substances because addiction has nothing to do with something's legal or not. People who are going to be addicts are going to be addicts. People who are going to use recreationally are going to use recreationally. People who aren't going to touch it aren't going to touch it, regardless of the statutes. So if you are inclined to vote against this because you think kids are going to get a hold of it or people are going to use more, I think that's unlikely to happen. Human behavior is human behavior regardless of the laws.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
I'm okay if APA is neutral.
Okay.
When you talk about licensed facilities, who funds those licensed facilities? Is that going to be funded by the state, or how does that work?
In order to become a licensed facility, you have to meet certain requirements and pay fees to become licensed. So the fees go to the Department of Regulatory Affairs generally, which is the state.
Then who pays you?
You bill for your services, and the people coming to you for your services pay.
You?
Mhm.
That sucks.
Or Medicaid or
Right.
insurance, whatever, yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, the state likely will not be paying anything whatsoever.
I'm
This is
guessing you
just-
have to pay to get yourself trained. If you
Right.
want to be a practitioner, then you pay the state to have your certification license,
Right.
whatever.
Okay,
If you're a facility, same thing, you pay the fees.
Right.
And then you charge the people who come to use your services. I'm guessing. I
Okay.
don't really know, but that's generally how it works.
do we want to stay neutral on this? Do we want to vote yes? Do we want to vote no, or endorse against? Any strong feelings to change our neutral stance?
We might lose some people who think we're Harry Fair. So I think.
really? Yeah, I would say yes.
Stay neutral. I would stay neutral.
Yeah.
Great,
Um,
neutral it is.
So we stay neutral or take a vote? Okay. You know.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
That's 20.
Affordable housing.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yay, Mindy.
I think you can make a soft pitch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, first of all, I want to ask, I mean, we keep talking about Tabor. What Tabor is, it was passed in 1992 in Colorado. The father of the amendment to the Constitution was Douglas Bruce. And it basically says this, one of the prime things is the state can't increase its revenue or keep its revenue above a formula based on population growth since 1992 and inflation. That's it. And I think we all know since 1992, our world has changed. I mean, you know, we can't provide state services for things like cybersecurity. In 1992, nobody knew what cyber, you know, no one had that many computers. You know, things have changed that in some ways government does need to grow and take on certain things. We didn't have as big a issue with homelessness in 1992. Housing was, you know, if you looked at the income levels between the lowest and the highest people, thinking of things have definitely changed in the last 30 years. And so that's the problems with our state continuing to have to operate under Tabor, where any revenue that gets from state income tax, which is a big source of our state funding, has to be returned. That's why we got the Tabor checks. For the counties, a lot of the money is property tax, and we'll talk about that next. But 123 is it's a citizen-led initiative. It was on petitions, and so it just needs a simple majority to pass on the ballot. And what it would do is would say, we're going to reserve enough money from the state revenue surplus, instead of it going to a Tabor refund, it would be the equivalent of roughly 0.1% of income, taxable income. And we're going to put it in a pot into programs. So we will exempt those revenue funds from the state Tabor revenue cap. 60% of it will go for financing, affordable housing financing programs. The other 40% will go to a blend of programs for home ownership, homelessness prevention. And I've left these on the table. Some are black and white, some are color. That sort of explain more about the 60 and the 40% and what that would do. It also requires that local governments, cities or counties, where these funds are going to be used, in order to the state to allow that use, the planning city or the county has to be more acceptable to affordable housing. They have to commit to processing applications within 90 days unless they get an exemption. So they have to be more speedy at processing any affordable housing proposals that come in through their planning department. And they also have to commit to increasing the amount of affordable housing that they have by 3% a year, basically. And a local government can choose not to do that. So it's not mandated, it's optional for every local government in the state. I just wanted to mention that it's been endorsed by, they have a huge endorsement or supporter list on their website. Many elected officials, nonprofits, labor unions have endorsed it. And even the local governments, the Colorado Municipal League, which is all the city leaders, and the Metro Mayors Caucus along the Front Range have endorsed it. Are there any questions? And we just, our leadership has said unanimously that we would support this from APA.
Mindy, what happens, I noticed on the bottom of the sheet, it talks about how it's really funded by a reduction in TABOR refunds. I've lived in Colorado since 2006, so not forever, but I've only seen 2 TABOR refunds. So what happens if it's a year where there aren't TABOR refunds? Is the state then in a position where they have to balance this requirement along with all of the other state funding requirements?
That's an excellent question. That's something that's been raised. First of all, it's not in the state constitution, so our legislature could vote any specific year, like if we're in a really bad recession and the state income tax revenues are not high enough to fund this, the money needs to go in the general fund for other priorities like education. Our legislatures could vote that year not to fund or not to add additional money to this affordable housing fund. So they always have that option. And they've also done some projections. They said even if we had a fairly large recession in next year, 2023, 17% recession, there's already still adequate funds in the state budget to support this without any impact on the general fund. We have a $3 billion general fund reserve right now. So even if a year where the tax revenues that come in wouldn't trigger TABOR refunds to people, they think we're still sitting really well. And again, if it's a really bad recession, the legislature can just say, no, education is more important or something else is more important and vote not to. It wouldn't take having to go back out on a ballot for all the people to vote on. The legislature can do that.
Yeah, now this goes into a fund. Is this fund something that you have to spend within that year, or could this fund also be used to buffer?
My understanding is the fund can carry over. Yeah.
So the fund itself could help fund in lean years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Amy.
Mindy, who manages the fund?
The 60%, well, it's the state overall overseeing it, but they're giving their authority for that 60% program to CHAFA, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And they have tons of experience. They do first-time homeowner programs. They issue the low-income housing tax credits. They're well established. The 40% support fund, I think it'll be DOLA. It'll be one of the state agencies that would be implementing that. And there are administrative fees built into this program if the state needs more staff to oversee this.
Do we
Are
feel,
we unanimous?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Robin.
Okay. You may have covered this, Mindy. I feel like one of the problems that we don't have more affordable housing is the not in my backyard philosophy of local governments and frankly of, local people who already have a home. So does this help alleviate that NIMBY kind of thinking, or is that a separate issue?
That's a great question. I don't think there's anything in here specific to the educational part of NIMBYism. I know there are other efforts to fight that going on. For example, Community First Foundation, which is here in Arvada, is working on developing tools to help local governments and developers deal with NIMBYism and get people more educated. I'm not aware of anything specific in this bill.
NIMBY, for those who are wondering, just means not in our backyard. It's a wonky acronym.
My thinking on that is, once you give a city the ability to have a backbone on some of this NIMBY stuff, they will get one. I mean, money is a big motivator, but it's also, it was a statewide mandate that we do more affordable housing, and it just gives them a stronger reason to say, I understand you don't want it in your backyard, too bad.
And I think the tide is slowly starting to turn on NIMBYism, even here in Arvada. No, I'm not
We can always
very
go
much.
worse.
Well, if you read next door, you're right. But,
Also,
Yeah.
does this, I feel like when I see government programs like this, it just gives money to slumlords to create more slums. And is there anything in this that would, like, is there any stiff regulations on the house has to look this good or?
you know, for even like with the Section 8 housing voucher program, that's
It's money for slumlords.
well, but I've seen where they actually have to go and inspect the apartment buildings, and they have refused to allow a lease in some buildings because of the condition. So it depends on how well it's implemented, but it's not supposed to finance slumlords, as you're calling them. There are mechanisms for checking the quality of the building and that it's safe. It's not like the public housing scares we heard about with Cabrini Shrine or Cabrini Green in Chicago and things like that. There is more of an oversight that CHAPA and the others administering the federal dollars are supposed to be checking. And then there's also a big preservation part of this too. It's not just for creating new housing, but like that apartment building for the seniors here in Arvada, that, you know, things are being sold left and right to investors. A lot of out-of-state investors are coming in and putting money in and jacking the rents up and displacing a lot of people, seniors and lower income people. So a lot of the funds it is allowed for preservation, not just new development. And that's something, again, Community First Foundation and a lot of our housing authorities are well aware of, that they need to do more preservation.
Do we have, I just want to say that we're at 5 o'clock, so we're going to kind of breeze through things at this point, but do we feel strongly about changing our vote from yes? Okay, great. So next up. Oops, that's.
Oh, that's more good information.
Go to this. So if we just, I think we just want to keep it brief.
We can keep it a little more brief. The housing was a very important one to get people excited about working on. Proposition 124, this would allow liquor stores to operate in more. What's that? Oh, yeah, it would allow, it basically would allow chains of liquor stores, and it is supported primarily by Total Wine and more, that has a couple stores in a couple liquor stores in Colorado. The people that own that store are out of Maryland. There's two brothers. One of them is a congressperson from Maryland. And each one of those people have contributed $900,000 to this measure. So basically what the intent of this measure is to replace independent single store liquor stores with chains. I mean, that's what it's about. So it's basically about favoring the big economic interests over the small people in business. That you can go into the liquor store business, without being a billionaire. But if you're up against the chains, that's going to be pretty difficult. I recommended pretty strongly that the Arvadans for Progressive Action oppose this measure.
And what did all of leadership say?
It was split 5 no's and 3 neutrals. So
I would very much like people to support this. Oppose this.
Does anybody feel strongly about opposing or voting neutral?
Are we only, as an organization, endorsing one way or not endorsing based on 100% agreement of leadership? Like what, because at the moment, more leadership is against it than neutral. So does APA then come out and say we're against it, or?
Well, basically what we decided in leadership was since we were all really busy in campaigns and that sort of thing, the things that we weren't unanimous on, we would have, get some input from the members as to whether we really did want to oppose this or whether we wanted to stay neutral.
Well,
So, and-
I'll share that not capping the number of liquor stores, meaning they can be anywhere and everywhere. In addition to being chains and whatnot, is really concerning to me. If you have big business liquor store chains coming in and buying up other retail locations, it's not only gonna freeze out independent liquor store owners, it's gonna freeze out other people trying to start small businesses who can't afford the rent of that spot in the strip mall
Right.
or whatever.
And it's also gonna, it possibly could have an impact on, our craft brewing industry. Because if we're all chains, they can decide in Maryland, what beer to carry, or, the chain decides. And often chains, want high volumes, so they're not as likely to.
Can we
Sure.
vote?
Yeah.
You know, vote. Okay.
I was on the neutral only because my one thought was, does this prevent the small business from becoming bigger? Like I want, right? And that was like my one hesitation,
Right,
yeah, I used to live in Maryland and there were tons of small liquor stores, so
Right.
I know total, but it
yeah,
didn't seem like, I didn't see a noticeable effect in Maryland, if that makes sense.
right,
However, I was like, well, what if the guy down the street wants to open up 5 stores and he wants to become the chain? Like, are we preventing him? I think I'll probably vote no. I just wanted to put out that slight thought that that's what made me just pause.
okay.
Okay, so let's vote. Yes on this measure. Okay. Neutral. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. Okay, that looks to me like a noticeable no. So,
I just want Costco to be able to sell liquor.
okay, proposition 125.
125. Yeah, this is about having grocery stores, sell wine as well as, beer. And, it's the argument for it is convenience, but the argument against it is that, again, small liquor stores would be, hard pressed to, compete with the grocery stores. The grocery stores are even bigger economic interest than the chain liquor stores. They're all, there's only 3 or 4 grocery store chains really in Colorado, and they're all owned from out of state. So the liquor stores are owned in state, and there are a lot of independent ones that supported by Albertsons, Safeway, DoorDash, Instacart, Kroger, Target, and the Colorado Chamber of Commerce. And it's opposed by a coalition of liquor stores.
So leadership voted unanimously no on this measure. Do we feel strongly about engaging in any other way? All right, I'm gonna take that as a no.
Okay.
All right, next
That's
up,
already an exemption for Trader
How come
Joe's.
we got all the booze ones?
I know.
I told him he had to do it.
I
What?
made some comment in the meeting about how I didn't.
One,
like
two,
one of them,
six.
and boom. I'm up here. Okay, I'm 126. for this. This is a little more pros and cons, maybe. It would make permanent temporary measures to allow third parties to deliver alcoholic beverages. And the arguments against it is, again, it puts small liquor stores in competition with somewhat in competition with the grocery stores, but it does benefit it does have some benefit to restaurants that can hire people to a third party to deliver. One of the reasons I recommended a neutral originally. I'm shifting more toward thinking that APA should pose it, and part of the reason for that is that the structure of some of these third-party delivery companies like DoorDash is pretty regressive, and trying to make independent contractors out of employees that then run their cars down, and you know, it's really repressive to the people that actually do the deliveries. So that's yeah, again, it's supported and opposed by the same people, except the Colorado Restaurant Association is for this. So other than that, it's supported the same people. So that's why I just open it up
How
to.
did leadership vote on it?
That is 1 no and 7 neutrals. So I think we're leaning towards not endorsing for or against. Does anyone feel differently? Great. Okay. Neutral it is.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Will these be coming out, all of this will be coming out in an email, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Um,
Jeffco 1A.
Yeah, so this really quickly, Jefferson County is one of only 2 counties that has not like de-Bruced. And de-Bruced means being able to override that Tabor revenue cap that we just talked about a few minutes ago. Jefferson and Weld haven't, and Jefferson County tried to fully de-Bruce a couple of years ago and it failed at the ballot. We still have a lot of conservative people in Jefferson County. So this is an attempt to just do a de-Bruce light, just for things like state grants. Because right now Jefferson County is at a real disadvantage. All of the other counties can apply like for state grants for wildfire mitigation, even affordable housing. Jefferson County did get a state grant to do a 15-year affordable housing comprehensive plan, $187,000. But if that counts against their Tabor revenue cap, they're gonna have to pull that $180,000 from some other effort. You know, we hear about our jails being underfunded. We hear about, you know, roads. And Jefferson County gets most of its money from property taxes, not from, there's no county income tax really. So they're trying to at least get residents in 1A to say for state grants and things like that, don't count that against the Tabor cap. So for non-property tax revenue that Jefferson County can get, don't count it against the Tabor cap. So we're recommending a yes vote on this. Are there any questions?
It was also a unanimous yes. Great, okay, yes. 1B. That is Taylor.
Yes, this is the 1B is to allow for the grow operations, manufacturing, and sales of marijuana in unincorporated Jefferson County. The county took comments on both of these issues. There's 2 marijuana related issues. And on this issue, there was nobody who said yes. There were a number of people who weighed in voting no. And those comments basically sum up to people who are blaming crime and homelessness on the use of drugs. And anything that would increase the use of drugs is bad. Also, one person was concerned about the environmental impacts of grow operations, primarily odor concerns. I recommend a yes vote for 2 reasons. First of all, I reject the simplistic argument that smoking marijuana causes crime and homelessness. And the second is that tax revenues from these operations are needed in Jeffco. These funds currently go to other jurisdictions when folks from Jeffco travel to other jurisdictions to purchase products. It's not going to stop anybody from growing or purchasing marijuana if you live in unincorporated Jeffco. But if you allow manufacturing in unincorporated Jeffco, it both provide jobs and help our economy, both directly and indirectly. So I would argue for a yes vote.
And so with this one, we had leadership vote, 5 yeses and 3 neutrals. Does anybody, we're leaning yes. Does anyone feel strongly otherwise?
So do we know
Back.
what our commissioners think?
Well, they put it on.
Oh, all right.
Yes. I saw a hand in the back.
I guess I'm confused, like, is there already all this allowed in the part of Jeffco that's not unincorporated, and this just a line?
It varies city by city. Arvada does not allow it. Wheatridge does, so.
Okay, so the rest of Jeffco is governed by whatever the city representatives have decided to do. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, go ahead.
I can't articulate it.
Okay.
I like neutral though.
Okay. Does anyone want to take a vote, or do most of us feel like, yes, we should endorse this?
I want to vote.
Yep.
You want to vote? Okay. No. I see 0 hands. Neutral. I see 5 hands, 6 hands. Yes. I see 7, 8. Okay, so yes is what we have decided on. Okay, next I think is Jeffco 1C, and that's Taylor as well.
This is a proposal to increase taxes on marijuana sales in Jefferson County. And again, this would apply only in areas where sales are actually allowed. So if you had a local jurisdiction that was allowing sales, then there would be an increase in taxes on those sales. This was kind of interesting. The comments that were voting yes for this were basically arguing that increasing taxes will reduce the use of marijuana and therefore reduce crime and homelessness. The no comments that were submitted were basically summing up to folks who were blaming crime and homelessness on the use of drugs, and therefore we shouldn't have any drugs, much less, you know, tax them. And then another group of people who were concerned about this as a nefarious plot by the Jefferson County Commissioners to try and evade Tabor and spur even more spending in Jeffco by the spending that would be encouraged by the increased taxes from marijuana. Again, I would verge a yes vote for the same reasons. I reject the simplistic argument that smoking marijuana causes crime and homelessness, and 2, that tax revenues from these operations are needed in Jeffco. And these funds currently go to other jurisdictions when folks from Jeffco travel to other jurisdictions. Now, there is, you know, there are state taxes from the sale of marijuana, and those go to the state and they indirectly benefit every jurisdiction, whether or not you allow for the sale of marijuana. But there are additional proceeds that go to the local unit, either city or county, if the local unit is where the sale occurs. So I would argue yes.
So I have a question about that. Is that on top of all of them, or is it because it's unincorporated Jefferson County, it has no way to tax other than being passed by the county, and that even retail places in unincorporated Jefferson County would not have sales tax? Because I'm not a fan of sin taxes, so I don't really like if it's tacked on top of just because it's marijuana. So I guess that's my question is, what is that tax that they want to add? Is it just on top of just the state taxes, or is it on top of any retail tax and then even more because it's marijuana?
The way that I'm reading it is that this tax would apply county-wide. So it would be not only the unincorporated areas that would be affected if 1B is passed, but it would be areas where it's already currently being sold. So I see this as an increase in sales tax between 3 and 6% on the sale of retail marijuana and marijuana products that would occur. Well, no, actually, I'm reading 1C right here, and they say that it would be within the unincorporated areas of Jefferson County. So I reverse myself. Yeah, this would only apply in the unincorporated areas, and therefore it would only 1C would only apply if 1B is passed.
Okay,
I do have a comment. This is a regressive tax, and we talked before about lower income people paying over 21% in taxes, and the wealthy paying 7%. This will tax the poor and the lower income people much higher. The rich people can get as high as they want. This will be a tiny percent of their income. So I would urge a no vote on it. I think progressives need to be very clear that we do not support regressive taxes.
I want to sort of caution that way of thinking, or at least I think a little bit differently. I feel like that sentiment insinuates that only low-income people and BIPOC communities engage in cannabis use. I think that statistically speaking, it's really spread out across the map, across incomes and colors and races and things.
But my point was that if you earn $400,000, this tax does not tax you.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And if you have lower income, it's not that they smoke more, but the tax is a bigger percent of their income.
Right.
So that's-
Right. Absolutely.
But I hear your caution.
But
I don't want to do that.
the only sales tax we should ever have are on luxury items.
Right, we shouldn't have, if we're gonna abolish the tax, it should be the sales
Right.
tax.
And do we have a question up here as well on Zoom?
Yes. I guess what it strikes me as these arguments, I find myself agreeing with parts of all and not all parts also. But to me, it just, so if we were to be able to sell in unincorporated Jefferson County and therefore need to raise that tax, I'm curious what our opinion would be if by allowing grocery stores to sell wine, and that would increase presumably the access to wine from grocery stores. Does that mean we should also then increase the taxes on that wine? And to me, it seems like, well, now that we're legalizing this, let's tax it. And if we're easing access, should we tax it? I don't know. And that makes me lean more towards a no vote, but that's just my 2 cents.
Progressive taxes on things that aren't necessities.
Great.
Well,
I mean, let me say that again. If it's not a necessity, then the regressive tax thing doesn't concern me as much if it's like taxing tampons, which is
I
something
agree.
everybody.
I would say tax this because what they're talking about is that the
If one-
little pot shops inside of Wheat Ridge are gonna lose business to the ones outside of Wheat Ridge because they get a tax break. So
Yeah.
Wheat Ridge is taxing it, outside of Wheat Ridge, it doesn't have to pay, Wheat Ridge sales tax.
Right.
So you're moving all this business outside. So if we're gonna pass the one, we should really pass this.
Well, the other thing is.
And it's not gonna pass, the other one doesn't pass, right?
Right. And I want to respect everybody's time. So I'm going to tell you how leadership voted on this, and then I would like for us to vote. So leadership was all over the place. That's so helpful. We had three yeses, 3 nos, and 2 neutrals. So I think this is one that we should definitely vote on. And I'm just gonna ask. So yes on 1C.
Because we're yes on 1B.
Right. 1, 2,
Wait,
3,
what did you
4,
say?
Because we're yes on 1B, I'm yes on 1.
6, 7,
gonna
8,
allow
9,
it.
10, 11. No. 2. Neutral?
There's one neutral on the-
2. Okay, so yeses have it. Yes on 1C. Okie dokie.
Might be the last one.
I think it's the last one.
Great. Well, that is it, folks. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna come over here and say this. Thank you so much for coming. For me at least, it was really valuable to talk these ideas through. A lot of these ballot measures can be so wonky, and you look at the blue book and it makes you more confused. So it's great to hold a space so that we can just get it all on the table. So we appreciate you coming. We will see you next month.
And now you have time to research all the
All right, bye everyone on Zoom. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.